morning everybody. I'm Tom Ransome from Open Outdoor. We're an out-of-home specialist and I've been invited here today to give you a little run through about where outdoor can sit in this ever-changing media world, and of course what we're doing to kind of change things and keep ourselves relevant and contextual. Now if we look at kind of, I'm going to give you a bit of a potted history again, as Graham did, of advertising. And if we look at 15 years ago, there was no internet spend at all. If we look now, the internet is the biggest medium, standalone medium, and that's really been at the cost of things like press and magazines, whereas some of the other media, so radio, TV, cinema and outdoor, have actually kept their share of voice pretty much constant over the time. And outdoor itself has actually seen some pretty consistent growth over that time. With the exception of the slump in 2008-2009, we've actually done pretty well. So it seems that we're obviously doing something right. It's still an attractive medium for advertisers. But I think it's important to kind of look at a bit of the history of outdoor so we can understand where we're going, where we've been, and what's next. If you kind of stepped out your door 100 odd years ago, got on a tube, you would have seen a situation like this. You know, not a lot really has changed on that system in the time since then. Likewise, things like buses, you know, a lot of the formats look very similar to what we have today, and also a lot of the advertisers. If we move into the slightly more modern age, this is something from the 1960s. This is Piccadilly Circus. And this is a time where outdoor had a bit more competition. So we had competition from commercial TV, commercial radio for the first time. And it meant that we were no longer the kind of last big broadcast medium. We had to compete harder. But what this kind of led to is a bit of stagnation. And if you look at this scene, I worked out there's about 18 ads here. There's 8 alcohol ads, there's 1 tobacco ad, and there's 2 automotive. And this is something that we saw for a long time in outdoor, a real kind of stagnation, and 3 or 4 categories dominating the medium, and they were kind of generally beer, fags and cars. Now since that was all banned, obviously we've been needing to change. And this is what's really kind of driven the growth in outdoor, I think. There's been lots of changes in our medium which have seen a real increase in the number of categories. We've worked really hard to increase the brand count in the medium. What you'll see now is there's a far more even spread in terms of the categories using outdoor. We've still got 3 big ones: entertainment, telecoms and finance. But we've also got a whole lot of new categories in outdoor that we'd never had before. Things like fashion, things like cosmetics, things like food. You know, imagine in the old days if you had some grubby old billboard, you wouldn't want a nice picture of your product on there. So people like Vogue now use it, people like Christian Dior. So there's lots of kind of high-end brands using the medium. So why is this? Well, I've seen this picture before somewhere, I think. There's a lot more people in the country, and this is a bit of a moot point today perhaps for some people with the election. But today there's 61 million people in the UK, which is fine in itself, but that doesn't really explain why outdoor is an improving market. But what we do know is that people are spending a lot more time out of home. In that 10-year spell there, this is between 1990 and 2010, so sorry, 20 years, sorry, people are spending 33% more time out of home. And that's something that's continuing, you know, now as well. And what that's down to is just the fact that there's more people working, people are spending more time commuting, but then there's this tail at the end, which is really explained by the fact that there's a lot more leisure time spent out of home. So, you know, 20, 30 years ago, you would have gone home, you might have watched Coronation Street in the evening. But these days you've got so many more choices. You might go to Westfield, which is open until 10, 11 o'clock at night. You might go to the cinema, you might go bowling, you might go to a restaurant. You know, there's lots of other alternative things we can do with our time, which means that people are out more. That allied with the fact that there's 16 million more vehicles now than there was in 1980. You know, it's quite a significant mobile audience. So it's a really good thing for outdoor. People are going past sites, they're seeing in the adverts. So it's a really positive place we find ourselves. So that's kind of half the story. We've seen that the audience is growing, but the other half of the story is something about investment in outdoor. Now, what this audience growth delivers is this kind of really attractive audience for advertisers. These are kind of people who are hard to reach elsewhere in media. So they're kind of high earners, they're commuters, they're city dwellers. So these are the people who are out and about. You know, these are kind of key guys, and I'm assuming for recruitment, these are the people you're going to want to talk to. But equally, on the other side of it, the better audience is also reflected by the fact that media owners have been investing significantly in the opportunities that are out there. We've seen a reduction in the kind of more standard formats. So, they've been culling lots of billboards, lots of, the worst presented sites, the sites that deliver the smallest audiences. So we're kind of confident now that when you go out and you see a poster site, it should be reflective of your kind of brand's qualities and desires. But equally, there's been a lot of investment in new types of sites. So these are kind of digital, large format locations, which offer a new angle in what we do. So this is the kind of thing we're talking about. This is a site that's up in Manchester. It's at the bottom of the kind of main pedestrianised shopping street, Market Street in Manchester. It's digital, so it offers all sorts of opportunities to kind of hit people in the right kind of mindset, right kind of state of mind. This is another one that's up in Manchester. This is one they call the Trafford Arch. Again, you'll see it's kind of an iconic location with really strong sight lines. So all this delivers kind of some really big numbers for outdoor. We know that outdoor delivers 98% of the UK population every week. So 98% of people see one poster each week, which is actually the biggest reach of any media out there. And that delivers a staggering 10.2 billion impacts per week. 10.2 wouldn't be quite so impressive. So we're in a really good spot. But if you kind of stepped aside and you were just reading the trade press and kind of trying to take in what was going on in outdoor, you could be forgiven for thinking that it's all about digital sites. Now you will have seen the development of a lot of these sites. This is on the M4 coming into town, into London. And this one again is a kind of key site in Manchester, which is out towards the kind of affluent southern suburbs, but head on, long dwell time, long sight lines, a really good site. But really, digital sites only deliver about 20% of the impacts in outdoor. So it's kind of a quite small part of what we do. But if you do it well, you can have some really amazing results. This is a campaign that BA did. I don't know if you've got sound, have you? Is it? Yeah.
What the public saw as magic was actually a carefully orchestrated piece of technology. We mounted an ambient antenna on the roof of a nearby building to read live data directly from each aircraft transponder within 200 kilometers. All aircraft emit radio waves containing their speed, altitude, GPS location, and a call sign. Our antenna is connected to a PC with a custom-built application which identifies the British Airways plane and send the data to our cloud server that controls the billboards. We created a virtual trigger zone in the sky that acted like a tripwire, so that when the BA plane into our trigger zone with a 0.2 second to press reference to registration number with flight data to Heathrow to the plane destination. Cloud altitude data told us if the plane could be seen, and if it could, information was sent to our building. Interrupting the current contact and play.
Now that example is a really good example, award-winning, needless to say. But this is one where people have brought together the amazing amount of data that's out there with a single poster site, where they're actually spending very little money. They've probably spent less than £100,000 on that. A lot of that was in the kind of backroom setup and the technology. But what you've seen with that is you've seen there's been, it's about 1.5 million views on YouTube. So these guys have spent a relatively small budget to kind of garner fame in a wider world with a single site at Piccadilly. So it's a really good opportunity for us to kind of use digital sites, use all that data that's out there. We can do live streams onto digital sites, we can use real-time data. So if you've got a digital bus stop, for example, you can talk to people just before the number 73 arrives. There's all sorts of opportunities for us in this kind of area. But as I say, this is only 20% of the medium. So there is another 75% of impacts that we need to make sure work properly for us. And this is the other side of the investment that Outdoor has made recently. This is something called Root, which is our kind of audience measurement tool. Without going into too much detail, it's an enormous bit of work. There's like 28,000 people, which is the biggest ever GPS study. So we know exactly who's walking past sites, when they're doing it, how they're going past them, what kind of mode of transport they're in, how they see the sites, and it just gives us a real insight into the market. It allows us to kind of measure stuff in 1,600 towns nationally, as I say, 28,000 people, and within it there's about 19 billion data points, different individual GPS points, which are growing by 3.5 billion a year. So it's kind of evolving, it's getting better. So as the world changes, our knowledge about how Outdoor is working with it changes as well. So it's a really, really useful tool. Now in the old days, how Outdoor would have worked was you would almost use the audience measurement tool. You'd choose your sites and then you'd run it through the system and it would say that delivers X people. But what we're able to do with a tool we call Planner, this is kind of a bespoke tool to our group, is that we're able to kind of put the audience first. So we're allowed to, you know, if we've got an audience of students, for example, we can look at them, work out which sites are the best sites to reach that audience and make our selections accordingly. And if you look at that number there, if you wanted to buy 1,000 sick sheets nationally from a universe of 60,000 people, sorry, 60,000 sites, there's about 72 trillion combinations you could go through to arrive at it. So if you're thinking you have to choose them, then run it through, that's pretty time consuming. This is a far better way to do it. And just to give you a little example, I don't know if the colours are working particularly well here, but if we looked at buying sick sheets again in London, and what I've looked at here is I've looked at an audience of 18 to 24 full-time people in full-time education. If you were to buy it the old way, you'd expect to get about 421,000 impacts from your 100 sites and a reach of about 140,000, so not enormous. But if we run it through our new tools, you can see the improvement. It's 2.2 million impacts, so that's double the impacts. The reach has kind of increased significantly, and outside of that as well, it also delivers that kind of halo effect to an audience who aren't potentially, you know, your key target, but will have an influence on what people are thinking about. So that's one way we can target Outdoor more effectively these days. But equally, given the fact that we're out of home so much, our mobile is now becoming an increasingly important part of the media world. We need to look at new ways to kind of define Outdoor. And one of these things is kind of developing this kind of virtual proximity. So in the old days, you know, Outdoor was was really good at kind of, you know, giving you kind of directional signage. So it might say McDonald's, you know, 400 yards down the road. And what this offers us the opportunity to do is look at where people are using mobile apps, and so placing sites accordingly. Now mobile is obviously increasingly important, and we know as time goes on, the number of searches, the number of app uses out of home on mobile devices is just surging. It's going through the roof. So this is a real opportunity for Outdoor, because obviously if people are out and about more, you know, Outdoor sites really offer that last opportunity to hit them whilst they're thinking about, you know, what they're doing on the internet. So it's a nice synergy there. What have we done to kind of develop this? Well, we've developed a partnership with EE, and again, this is kind of a completely bespoke partnership. Nobody else has access to this. So if you think these guys are about a third of the market in the UK, any data that they give us is going to be reflective of the wider market. And what it does is it kind of shows us where people are looking at particular apps. So what we do, obviously these spikes are kind of the high points. What we do is we put together a taxonomy. We put together a taxonomy of sites that we're interested in looking at. So if you're a recruitment client, for example, you might want to look at your job boards, you might want to look at your recruitment sites, and we can define then the areas in towns and cities, hotspots, where people are looking at these sites. And then we obviously try and buy poster sites in proximity to those or within them. So what it's giving you is that extra layer of kind of targeting and relevance. Now, so far, this is a pretty new thing. We've probably done about £10 million worth of business on this. So it's a good chunk of money. But we've seen people like Very, targeting their sites outside, locations where people are looking at fashion and retail sites. We've seen British Gas, ME, looking at kind of account management apps. AXA, SMEs, this is quite an interesting one. They've kind of looked at contracts which have less than 10 names on them. So that's what they've done with that is use that to target SMEs up and down the country. So quite a nice and slightly different way of using the data. Lenovo looked at kind of technology retailers and review sites, and what this has done, we've researched this Lenovo campaign and we did a test and control, and what it delivered was a 200% improvement in terms of ad awareness, consideration and online searches for that website in those areas. So it's pretty impressive, and combined with the route data gives us a real opportunity to offer big numbers, real focus in terms of what we're doing and relevance in the modern world. And if you kind of combine that with the digital sites as well, there's a real opportunity to kind of mix the two and develop something which is real time, which is relevant to people, is in the right place, and will hopefully drive behaviours. That's me. Thank you.